Welcome back to Google Developers Live at I/O. I'm Louis Gray here from the Moscone Center in San Francisco. I've got a great guest here today, Bradley Horowitz, Vice President of Product on Google+.
Hey,
Welcome,
Louis.
Bradley.
Thank you.
This is an incredible event here at Google I/O. This is my fourth time attending. Second as a Googler, I came twice as press, if you recall. How many times have you been here?
I guess 3 that I can recall. I'm not sure I made it the first year.
We've got about like 6,000 developers, and I swear all of them are right next to us.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really exciting.
It's just been, I think, a really great opportunity to connect to the developers who interact with our products, take a look at each one of them, be it Chrome, Android, Google+, obviously, YouTube, and really get to talk directly to the people who are making this happen. And that's part of what we're trying to do with Google Developers Live, is get that immediate direct access. Now, there's a lot of people who watched the keynote yesterday.
Yeah.
It was an incredible keynote. 3.5 hours,
Yeah.
And just action-packed. Let's talk a little bit about what Google Plus announced for those people who could have missed it or haven't gotten deep to understand what was introduced. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the keynote was epic. I mean, it was a huge day for me personally, for our team, and I think for Google too. And we had a section in there where Vic, who is our rock star leader, got up and announced really 3 major themes for Google Plus that all landed on the same day. The first is one that is basically a complete redesign of the stream, and really a rethinking of the stream. It's not simply a visual design, it works and behaves in new and exciting ways. That in itself was a major undertaking. It touched every part of our product, and it's almost a relaunch of Google Plus itself.
It's dramatically different. I think
Yeah.
when we looked at it, they talked about really adding depth to Google Plus.
Yeah.
You know, the discussion was many different sites are often very flat.
Yeah.
And with the Google Plus redesign, maybe you can take me through some of
Sure.
either the thinking about how do you do the redesign in the first place,
Yeah.
and then what were some key elements you wanted to make sure you delivered on
Yeah.
when this went live?
Yeah, we could spend an hour just on that first element of what
Then
we
you'll have
launched.
to come back when I get back to Mountain View. Let's talk about
That's
that.
fine too. So, as I said, it's more than just a visual design. One of the things that inspired this was our development process. We're developing for multiple platforms. We have been getting huge accolades and praise from the press and our users around our mobile and tablet designs. And we also felt some frustration that the desktop experience wasn't up to par, wasn't consistent, wasn't sort of inspiring the same kinds of adjectives that the mobile and tablet experience were. So part of what inspired this was sort of the disparity between those experiences,
Right.
and what we saw as an opportunity to reconcile them. We started asking ourselves, why are they different? Why wouldn't they converge in terms of how they behave? And I think that is part of the art of developing across platforms, is understanding and having principles around where things converge and where they diverge.
Right.
Because it's not that you want the experience on a mobile device to simply be smaller, right? That's not the right answer, and we know that. So we put a lot of thought into that. We came up with something I think is beautiful. It is a multi-column card interface that really brings the content to the fore. And I think that's one of the design principles, was to allow the content to shine, to be the hero in the product. Things like menus recede gracefully to the side when you don't need them and appear when you do. And that's sort of one of the other principles, is sort of emergent functionality. Stuff is there, but it's not clutter. It's not sort of attracting your attention or detracting from the content itself.
Now, we talked a few times already at GDL talking about that unification of design. I think
Yeah.
that was a big thing that came out of the keynote, that you're essentially having the same exact experience on a smartphone, a tablet,
Yeah.
or your desktop. And you saw that with the Google Play Store redesign.
Right.
You've seen that with Chrome. You've seen that with some of the notification
Now,
updates,
yep.
and Google Now
Yep.
especially. And now Google Plus, I think, has been one of those big pieces. And so that was one of the 3 things that you announced yesterday.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the other 2. One of them was obviously the Hangouts app.
Well, I didn't even get through the first. I mean,
Okay.
we didn't talk about auto hashtagging.
Right.
We didn't talk about the dimensionality. I mean, just to briefly touch on that, and then we'll talk about Hangouts.
Sure.
But, most streams are sort of like a newspaper that moves through a viewport in one dimension. It's really very flat. what we've done also is introduce depth to the stream. Part of that is literally cinematographic kind of animation so that you can flip a card around and there's information on the back of the card. But more metaphorically, we've introduced depth in the sense that we're really leaning on hashtags. Now, hashtags are great. Chris Messina, one of our own Googlers, is credited with having invented the concept. But in most social media, very small fractions of the content actually benefit from hashtags. And there's well-known problems with hashtags, right? There's sort of race conditions. What is the canonical hashtag for a given topic or news event?
Sure.
We think we've solved those in a way that is a Google approach. So what we do is we automatically hashtag content. We look at the words, of course, the sort of semantics behind it. We look at the images, so we can actually do image analysis and tag images based on the content of the images.
I saw in some of those demos, there was an example of an Eiffel Tower photo where the person had no hashtags inserted at all, didn't even mention Eiffel Tower in the post, and yet Google knew with the type of analysis and algorithms that we have that this was the Eiffel Tower.
Right.
And they hashtagged it automatically, and that was nifty.
It's incredible, and it works for landmarks, it can work for categories of images. It's something I hope everyone can try. The cool thing about this is that we have the knowledge graph, we have knowledge of clustering, and can apply these hashtags. So hashtags become these doorways to explore content. If there's a particular thing I'm interested in, I click on the hashtag, and on the back of the card are more that I can swipe through. Right. And it's a way to really dive through the content in a new dimension.
And one of the things that's really come up about Google Plus in the last 2 years since you debuted is the following of interests.
Yeah.
Going beyond people and the relationships you have in real life to having shared interests. And we've seen that with communities, which were introduced earlier this year, I believe, as well as this kind of hashtag approach where you can find out more people talking about the same things that you're interested in.
Exactly.
How have you kind of looked at that from a philosophical standpoint, where you have that, not a dichotomy, but a different way of looking at how content flows through between people and interests?
Yeah, I really appreciate that use case. People have that's one of the advantages of being here is you really learn how people are using the product. And as you point out, interests are one of the main success stories of Google+. People discovering people with common interests or affinities. The truth is, I think we haven't done enough to really make that use case shine. And I think this hashtag opportunity gives people a new vector to connect to other people, to connect to content that matters to them. And so this is really a recognition of that use case and doubling down in a way that I think will really promote that use case. People have sort of been doing it around the product, and now the product is leaning into that trend and facilitating this. So I really think this is a major innovation. It's sort of a Google kind of problem, the ability to do this automatic hashtagging requires lots of artificial intelligence, machine learning,
scale.
Across languages. I mean, it's very impressive technology. The other thing I want to mention is that we always put the content owner first. So if you hashtag your own content, that gets preferred, and those hashtags will appear. We distinguish between user-entered hashtags and machine algorithm-generated hashtags. If you don't like the hashtags we put there, you can X them out on a per hashtag basis, or you can opt out entirely and say, don't hashtag my content.
And so you're talking about the stream. It's really interesting. There's so much content flowing through Google Plus right now, especially depending on how many people you're following. As you follow interests, I've seen some communities just explode.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that not all posts are created equal. And I think that gets called out a little bit in the new redesign.
Yes.
And you have certain posts that can span multiple columns.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that. Is that just something, like if I put a horizontal photo, is it just going to expand out like that?
No, it's actually intelligent about how, as you said, all content's not created equal, and pending the nature of the content, part of you, as you mentioned, media content renders really well and deserves this kind of full screen treatment. Part of it is the affinity you have to the content itself, both the poster and the topic, and so we'll bring the right content to you in the right format. And this ability to sort of have these super posts, which get more screen real estate and attention, is one of the big benefits of the new redesign that we're excited about.
And Superpost, works actually really well. Going back to photos, obviously the photo community has been incredible on Google+. It's really been something where I've seen a lot of focus from the team. Not only the photos team explicitly, but from Vic all the way down, really diving in, understanding how photos in a visual design experience can really differentiate Google+. And I know we're not kind of going in order, but I want to talk a little bit about photos. You've introduced, you call it Auto Awesome, and some auto enhancements, and it seems like you're not just accepting of photos, you're embracing it and making it a big part of that experience. What is it about photography that has exploded on Google+? Why is it happening here?
I think it's back to that respect for the content owner. What we're trying to do is get out of the way and allow this stuff to be presented in the most beautiful form, and then to connect up audiences with content producers. So what's not to love in that equation, where we sort of have no agenda other than to help you find and reach your audience and put your content in the best light. So that has been noticed and acclaimed, and we've gotten into this very nice rhythm with photographers where they've come onto the service, fill it up with great content, and we're listening to make the service better and better. And as you pointed out, the second big theme, we're not going in VIX order, but the second big theme of yesterday's announcements was a slew of new features and capabilities on photos. And this was not necessarily for the very top of the pyramid, the Thomas Hawks and Trey Radcliffes.
But the professional photographers, this is for everybody.
This is for everybody, and we're sort of raising the bar. And the best way to think about this, the way that I sort of like that Vic framed in the keynote, Google has tremendous data centers, bandwidth, computing power, and we introduced a long time ago this feature that allows you to instantly upload your content, your photos, into our cloud, and that's fantastic.
With any device that's connected, right? I mean, so if I take a picture with my Android device or my iPhone or iPad, if they're connected, or even Glass, it'll be instantly uploaded and available for me, kind of auto backup, to get to and retrieve.
And it's really self-evident, right? I think once we did this, it was widely copied in the industry, and of course my content should not be locked on an SD card. If you ask people, how many of you have pictures on your phone that you never got around to sharing or liberating or doing anything with, everyone raised their hands, right? And in this day and age, we're all cycling through phones. You know, you basically put it in a drawer or hand it down to generations, and so having that content trapped on a device, especially one that is internet connected, is absurd. So that's widely understood now. We introduced that feature and people love it and appreciate it. But that is the tip of the iceberg. It's table stakes. It's the most modest thing we could do with what Google could offer to users. And what we launched yesterday were 3 more enhancements that I really think speak to what a cloud-based approach to photography can do. The first one is auto curation and the ability to sort of highlight your photos. So all of us are in a state now where we go on a vacation, we come home, and you've got a folder full of photos, hundreds, maybe even 1,000. You know, I went to Morocco recently, took about 1,000 pictures. The problem is you don't get a second vacation to go through your first vacation's photos, right?
And even for those of us who don't have the luxury to go to Morocco, I mean, I've got 3 kids, 4 and under. And so they're beautiful, and it's fun to take photos of them. But you know, I'm spending most of the time trying to get them to go to bed and be obedient, rather than trying to like add shadows here and do texturing and find the right ones. And so it really made sense to me when Vic gave his presentation about not only looking at 600 photos and taking it down to the top 40, but also the fun ones where you say, you know, none of the kids are looking at the right place at the right time. And you kind of animate that.
So we all feel this problem. I mean, again, when everyone raises their hands and understands the auto backup functionality, but if you say, how many of you have sort of taken more photos than you know what to do with, everyone will raise their hand. And so some of what we're doing to help with this curation problem is sort of self-evident. We'll get rid of the blurry ones. We'll get rid of the overexposed ones or underexposed ones when they're sort of beyond repair, and we'll get to repair in a minute. But some of what we're doing is really very clever. We're able to sort of find people in the photos, understand your affinity to those people, understand are they smiling in the photos. And what we're doing is we're taking what is an intractable problem, going through 1,000 photos, and coming up with a starting set where here's the 25 we think would be a great representation of your vacation. Did we get it right? And you can go in and actually say, no, that one isn't what I want to share. I prefer this one. And of course, every time you do that, it's helping make algorithms smarter. You know, you're actually volunteering a bit of information to the global commons that will help tune our algorithms. And ultimately, they'll be individually tuned. If you sort of prefer somber shots where people aren't smiling, we should offer you that.
I say, like, this is my serious face.
Yes.
But you talk about that, helping the algorithm get better. And I want to touch on that a little bit before we jump back into Hangouts. When you look at Google+, it really is kind of two pieces, right? You've not only got the destination site, which is incredible and has a beautiful new look, and a lot of people are talking, engaging, and sharing their interests, but it's making other Google products better.
Yeah.
And you could see that yesterday, especially when you talk about new maps and Google Play with recommendations from your friends and all these little pieces. How do you balance those two, I don't want to say competing interests, but separate interests?
Yeah.
You've got a team of people who's got a lot of work to do, a bug list a mile long, features they want to get out. How do you go ahead and say, we've really got to make a better experience for Google with Google+? I want to talk about that philosophy and how you go
Well,
through
as
that.
you know, it's been part of our stated strategy for a long time, is to be not just a site, not just a new product, but a horizontal social spine, a layer of infrastructure that makes all products better. And ultimately, as you'll talk to Seth, I think after me, it's not just makes all Google products better, it makes all products on the web better. And it's something we want to offer to publishers and developers as well. How do we balance those? As you point out, I don't think they're competing, but there are finite resources and only so many hours in the day, and so we have to sort of thread that needle. I think part of Vic's leadership is to understand that this is a journey, that it's not something we ever anticipated we'd be done with in 20 months. And while we're delighted with the usage and the uptake and the progress that we're making, we've got a roadmap that will carry us for a very long time, and some very exciting things ahead of us. As you point out, I can't think of a product or team at Google that isn't already working with us and won't revolutionize the functionality of their own product through better and deeper integration.
I think that's something that you and I know inherently, because we've been close to Google Plus for a long time. And I think some of the challenge of bringing our knowledge and our comfort level with everything that we're doing with Google Plus to the outside world, and I think we have an opportunity now to do that, where people would really get what we're thinking. People often talk about success. How do you measure that success? Whether it's at a 12-month standpoint, a 24-month, and you say it is a long vision. How do you know you're on the right track and doing well? What kind of feedback do you get?
That's a great question. Well, the first, and something we're very attuned to as a team, are the metrics. And
what kind of metrics?
Well, we measure everything. So time spent and engagement, and these are our health indexes for our own products, and we're very attuned to them, and we strive to understand them, measure them, and improve all of those metrics. So that's one way. In terms of what we share publicly, obviously our dashboards are useful internal tools. Our public numbers right now are about 190 million monthly actives on Google Plus itself, the mobile client or the Google Plus site. We're happy with that. It took other social companies 5 years, 7 years to get to 200 million. 200 million is right in sight for us, and that's incredible usage, incredibly engaged users. As you point out, there's content that's exploding on the system, and we're just getting started. So all of that is very validating and a great way to measure the success of the product. I do think that we're never satisfied, and so while all of those trends are in the right direction, there's so much to do. People in the session I just left were saying, where's your analytics? You need analytics for us to take the platform seriously. They're right. Where's your API? We want you to more fully open the API and continue down the platform.
We did earlier today, we had the Google Plus sandbox. We did a walkthrough and highlighted a number of those partners. We definitely had a chance to talk with Seth. And I think the interesting part to me, having seen it from both sides, both first outside of Google and now inside, is externally you have people's expectations. They really want to get to the code. They've been asking for certain types of APIs and actually different type of write APIs and this and that. And that's something that Vic's addressed a few times and trying to do this in the right way.
Exactly.
And patience is hard. It's hard to be taught, and to make sure you do it in an excellent way that's good for users and developers. And what can we tell developers right now who want to know that Google Plus is a place that they should invest their time?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it does require patience to grow a network like we're growing, and we don't want to inorganically sort of pour users in. We want it to have a healthy sort of trajectory. We think that growth for its own sake is, we're not just looking for spikes, we're looking for sustained, organic, viral, exponential growth, and that happens over time. Now, some of this, as I pointed out, we've managed to compress 7 years into 20 months. That's awesome, but things have to happen in a sequential order, and as we open up APIs, Vic's talked a lot about this, we want to ensure the integrity of the system, both from a spam and abuse point, from making sure the content reached the right users in the right moment, in the right way. There's a lot of science behind that, and some of that has to be learned in the field. And so we've continued to introduce new APIs, new functionality, Google Plus sign-in, all of these things in disciplined, thoughtful ways that have not impeded, but rather accreted value to our growth trajectories and the value of the network.
Right.
So,
and I think there's also 3 pieces that we touched on a number of times in the keynote, and you touched on a little bit with spam and abuse. We talk about 3 things, and that's speed, security, simplicity.
Yeah.
And I think you touched a little bit on security and simplicity of getting photos up there, simplicity of being able to post.
Yeah.
And what about speed? Like, how do you measure if something's happening quick enough? What is a good load time? How does that impact you guys?
We care so deeply about latency and speed, and it's across a number of levels. One is just load time, page load time, being as efficient as we can, making sure we're doing things right. I know there's lots of sessions here, but our internal hygiene there is rigorous, and we care deeply about that. It's everything from how the system's architected to how the page is rendering in specific browsers. So that's one aspect of speed. Another is for things like, I haven't even gone through the features of auto-enhancing your images,
right.
but these are compute-intensive features. And so thinking about how we take advantage of Google's global compute infrastructure to do that in a way that is efficient is another aspect. Making sure the algorithms are efficient, making sure that users' expectations are in line with what we can deliver. All of these things, for instance, auto hashtagging. One thing the team struggled with is, could we do it in real time? Could you post something and have the post drop into your stream with the hashtags directly on it? That was a big challenge, because what we wanted, again, in deference to the content owner, we didn't want you to have to come back tomorrow to see how your post was tagged, right?
Right.
We wanted that to be real time.
You want to go back and fix it 5 minutes later or 5 hours later.
It had to be interactive, and so speed is throughout our product of foremost concern, and we think about it deeply and in subtle ways, and in the forefront of a lot of what our teams are working on.
Yeah. And one of the other forefront pieces you've got is Hangouts. I think that's been one of the. I always used to say, like, Hangouts is kind of that hammer that hits all the nails. It's just been an exciting thing that Google Plus had that was a significant differentiator, and it's been there since day one. And Hangouts has really kind of grown into something else now. We have the on-air capability and the new app that launched yesterday, which really kind of unifies a lot of our messaging. So let's talk about that. I definitely don't want to miss that.
Yeah, okay. There's so many more photo features I would love to talk about, but in the interest of time, I'll take your lead and we'll talk about Hangouts. Hangouts is an incredibly beautiful, simple, and subtle product. I'm really proud of the team. It took a lot of craft and discipline from a product standpoint to build something that just works. It's not the sort of wow factor of enhance your photos or automatically hashtag something. It is just a beautiful, thoughtful, convenient product experience that just works like it should. One of the things Vic took you through was a matrix, and aren't there already products that sort of fulfill this? And the truth is,
I've been able to send you a chat before, I've been able to send you photos before, but I think that matrix essentially showed like photos, videos, and text across different devices. And
single user, multi-user,
they're really 3 dimensions now, rather.
Yeah, it's a cube. There really is no product that met all of those requirements, and I really think we've nailed it, and we're going to put something in everyone's pocket, irrespective of device, or in front of everyone. Maybe it's not in your pocket, maybe it's on your face, or maybe it's on your desk, but we're going to put it everywhere you need it, and it will be the simplest way to connect to another person, to really connect to another person, whether that's text, photos, emoji, or real-time face-to-face interaction between groups of people. We are going to span that entire gamut. And for Google, I think distribution has never been our problem. If we had a great product, we have an opportunity to get that in people's hands. And I don't think we've stepped up and created the right product until yesterday. And we now
solving
have that
these problems are hard.
opportunity.
I mean, one of the behind the scenes, I think The Verge did a big run through of the Hangouts creation. It's a challenge to take the many different products that we have and make a beautiful, seamless user experience like Larry often talks about and Vic often talks about. And so we've seen that with Google+, we're seeing it again with Hangouts.
Yeah.
And one interesting thing about Hangouts, because it's such a shining star of Google+, it's gotten a lot of attention, but it's also gotten a lot of real-world use that kind of goes unspoken. When I was in Europe, I did a hangout with my kids and my wife every single day. We were separated by 6,000 miles, give or take, 8 or 9 hours. And every day I spoke face-to-face with my kids, and they just expect it.
Yeah.
They've come to believe that they can pick up a Nexus 7, ask Google anything, get the answer they want, connect with anyone, anytime.
Right.
I mean, just even simple things like getting a movie on Google Play on Instant. It's incredible what they believe. And you look at Hangouts, even last night after we wrapped up at 7 o'clock, I went to the hotel, and my wife sends me a message on Hangouts and says, can we do a Hangout now? I said, sure. And got to talk to my kids and tell them all to go to bed and pick up their toys and that.
Right.
And so how has Hangouts really changed the way that you kind of collaborate, either at work or at home? Are you still kind of having fun just hitting the Hangout button and waiting for people?
Well, it's changed it dramatically. I think as you're pointing out, we have these high-profile Hangouts on air. We have the president and the Dalai Lama and chiefs of state and all
the way down to my kids.
Yes, right. So that stuff gets the attention and a lot of times, but what is more exciting to me is people just using Hangouts in this sort of private, important way to connect to other people. So the use case you talked about, I experience myself all the time. When I'm traveling, it's the best way to connect face-to-face with the family and sort of have an authentic, great connection. It's so much better than a call. People don't even want to, you hand the phone to the kids and they don't even want to talk. But if you can see them, and I'm often using the effects, and we're having fun, we're laughing, we're interacting. It's real, it's visceral. So I'm a fan of that use case. But you pointed out at work. One of our leaders, Chi Chu, who is the VP under whom Hangouts was built, mentioned in the previous session that Google itself conducts more than 20,000 Hangouts a day.
Right.
So this has become an integral piece of our own workflow. We can't get through the day without using Hangouts to connect to our distributed offices and actually get our jobs done. So it's not only for fun and giggles and laughs and connection with the family, it's for serious work. We actually use screen sharing. We do our presentations this way. We interact as teams over Hangouts, and it's really spanning the gamut of communication, everything from the ridiculous to the sublime.
Sure.
And so, it's a part of my daily life, every day of my life.
Right. So one of the things we talked about interests. How do people factor into Google Plus and Google at large? I mean, I know there's a kind of, what do we call it, a rallying cry, or really the genesis of Google Plus. It wasn't just that you had a lot of people who wanted some work. Like, what has sparked that, and how is that continuing today?
Well, I love the way Vic put it yesterday in his keynote. He said, technology should get out of the way so that we can do what we're really here to do, live, learn, and love, right? Those are the things that are important in people's lives. And technology should not be a bright, shiny object that detracts from that. On the contrary, it should empower that and enable that. And that's what we're trying to do at Google writ large, but also at Google Plus, is sort of get the technology out of the way and allow that connection to happen. And it informs our design, it informs our product direction, it informs the thinking. One of the things I loved yesterday, it was a long keynote, but the thread of people and of living, learning, loving, and the connection was present throughout every presenter's moment up there.
Concluding with Larry, I think one of the things we've touched on a few times with GDL at I/O is at Google, we actually have an opportunity to hear from Larry about once a week. Some people even more. And the interesting thing about Larry is he doesn't talk about product details and features and get deep down in it. He talks about the way that it can transform humanity and the opportunity that's available through technology and the things that Google should be doing. And I thought it was a real pleasure to see that kind of direct access to Larry by all the developers who are here and those who are watching on the live stream as well. And I think the type of things that you're talking about, which are very emotive and feeling oriented
Yeah.
are something that has been a key for Google Plus from the beginning, and we're really seeing comes from the very top.
Yeah, it really does. And you said he doesn't get into the details. He actually does, and
Right.
and he has got fantastic insights at that level too. But I think you're right. What is thrilling is to be a part of that vision, to sort of think about the way that Larry thinks about the problems. To catch some of that yesterday when he was saying things like we should be building products that don't yet exist.
Yes.
Like it is so natural for us as humans to sort of gravitate to the comfortable, the known, to sort of think of things in reference to other things, and we don't even realize how much that inhibits our creativity.
Sure.
And Larry is just masterful at breaking through those constraints and barriers and up-leveling people's thinking to greatness.
Right.
He's a really great model of that, but he also inspires others. And so I was thrilled that he had a chance to literally inspire millions yesterday and give people a taste of what it's like to work with him and for him.
Yeah, it was exceptional. I'm glad you touched on that. The very first person I spoke to at GDL.io yesterday was Megan Smith, VP of Google X. We talked about moonshots.
Yep.
And it's really an incredible opportunity to change the world at a big level. And so I definitely thank you for coming on. We're just about out of time. And right up after this, we have Seth Sternberg on Google Plus as well, talking about Google Plus sign-in. So we're going to leave with you and cut over to Seth. So for those of you watching on the stream, stay tuned. While we're kind of getting Seth ready, go ahead and make sure to take the time to go to YouTube and subscribe to Google Developers. Thank you very much, Bradley.
Cool. Thank you. It was a
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.